Before we start the video, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you. And now, let's go. Story 1. Hey man, don't forget your coat. Are you sure you don't want to ride home? Nah, not with how many beers you just drank. It's nice and cool out, and I'd rather walk back anyway. Fair enough. Would you mind closing the garage door when you leave? No problem. See you in the morning. Floyd grabbed his white bomber jacket from the back of the chair he'd been sitting on and threw it over his shoulders as he wished me luck for the next day. We'd spent all day in my garage, putting the finishing touches on the car. By the time the sun had set, we were ready to call it a day and relax with a few hard-earned beers before the meetup in the morning. I crashed on the sofa with another bottle, letting my mind drift off to sleep. I'd spent the better part of 2 years saving up for a project car, and 6 months after that waiting for parts to start slowly coming in the mail before I could finally start putting it all together. All in all, I was proud of what I was able to do with the car. The engine repairs have been ongoing for months, so it was refreshing to spend the day with my friend, making little quality of life or cosmetic changes. I'd taken the morning to put in an LED aftermarket stereo, and the afternoon to install the carbon fiber ductile spoiler, while Floyd volunteered to spend the bulk of the day wiring up and installing the new remote start. My Honda's 2000 was show ready, at least by our amateur standards. I woke up the next morning around 10:45. I swore under my breath, wondering why Floyd hadn't called yet. I was supposed to pick him up at his place for the meetup almost 2 hours ago. I threw on a clean pair of jeans and quickly made my way towards the garage. As the humid morning air hit my face, I rolled my eyes to see Floyd had forgotten to close my garage door on his way out, leaving my pride and joy open to the elements. A quick once-over didn't show any signs that anyone or any wildlife had messed with anything, but it annoyed me nonetheless. I hopped in the driver's seat and excitedly pressed the new push-to-start button sitting neatly where my key ignition had been the day prior. I felt the hum of the engine, the reverberated roar of the additional horsepower echoing through my small garage. I didn't think I'd ever get used to how much more powerful this car felt compared to my everyday used Prius. Floyd didn't pick up his phone when I called him while driving over to his apartment just down the road. By the time I pulled up, it was almost 11, and knowing there were only a couple precious hours left at the car meetup, I left him a short voicemail apologizing for being late and hoping I'd see him there somehow. As I pulled out of his parking lot and made my way toward the highway, I decided it would be fun to test out how fast I could get the car to go. This was partly to see how much the new spoiler helped, but mostly because after all the modifications we'd made, I hadn't taken her out for a real spin yet. I was disappointed to find that despite the roar of the engine, she was feeling sluggish, as though there was something holding her back. No matter how hard I pressed my foot on the gas, I couldn't get up to nearly as much speed as I'd hoped for. I barely had to put on the brakes in order to get back down to the speed limit when I passed the local speed trap, which broke my heart just a bit. When I pulled up to the meet, I found an empty parking space near the edge of the cluster of cars being ogled by enthusiasts. I pulled in and looked around to see if Floyd had managed to get a ride from someone else, but he was nowhere to be seen. I rolled down the convertible roof and awkwardly stood around waiting for someone to come check out the car, shooing off the occasional bumblebee. I had attended many of these meetups as an onlooker, but never as a participant, and I wasn't sure how to behave to get people to look at my ride. By noon, I gave up entirely and closed my roof, letting myself go look at the admittedly much nicer cars. Everyone began dispersing and packing up at close to 1 o'clock, and I begrudgingly accepted that I probably had a lot more work to do before my car was really ready to be shown off like the prize I knew she was. I walked back to my lonely parking space and leaned against the trunk for a few moments, letting the cool air blow through my hair while I quietly watched the ants swarming in the grass behind the curb under the hot summer sun. As the last of the remaining cars peeled out of the lot, the silent march of the ants was broken by a large black wasp, hurriedly dragging a crumpled black tarantula across the dry dirt until it came to a small hole in the ground. It pulled the spider inside, disappearing for a few short moments until it emerged, lazily flying away. The car's sluggish groan annoyed me to great lengths on my way home. As I tried speeding down the highway, I called Floyd again, but he still didn't pick up. I hoped he wasn't mad at me for forgetting him that morning, but more importantly, I hoped he'd made it home safe the night before. I pulled into my garage, telling myself I'd wait to fix whatever was dragging the car down the next time I could get a hold of Floyd to work on it with me. By the day of the next meetup a month later, that time had not yet come. I'd gone by his place on a few occasions and called him more times than I could count, but he seemed intent to avoid me like the plague. I wondered if I'd said or done something to upset him while drunk the last time we'd hung out, but I couldn't recall anything that would have upset him. I hadn't so much as touched the S2000 between the two meets. I'd gotten around in my day-to-day car, not wanting to mess with the project without my friend, hoping we'd reconnect soon. As I hopped in, I decided to make my way to the meetup location with the roof down to feel the cool air on my face as I drove. I thought to myself as I opened it up that I must have spilled some soda in my garage somewhere, as the faint smell of sugar wafted past my nose, insects swarming around the sweet odor in the air. The engine problem was, of course, still present, if not worse than before. There was no way in hell that the car I had spent months benchmarking was performing this poorly, unless it was somehow just that much heavier after the modifications. I knew the weight distribution on this car was supposed to be damn near perfect. Something was screwing with it, either the suspension sagging or something weighing down the rear axle. The realization hit me like a brick, and I made a hasty U-turn back towards my house. I hadn't checked my trunk yet, and if Floyd had forgotten his hefty toolbox in there, there could be significant unaccounted weight on the back of the car, screwing up the balance and the performance. Maybe there was some mix-up, and he somehow thought I'd stolen his tools. It was a long shot, but this could fix both of my problems. I pulled back into the garage, eager to confirm the source of the extra weight. As I reached to grab my key and unlock the small trunk, my heart sank. Floyd had replaced the physical key with the remote start and electronic fob, but I wasn't sure where he'd put the old physical key. I could have sworn I'd left it unlocked in case something like this happened, but it wasn't budging. I nearly tore the garage apart looking for it. I searched through every shelf, in every pile of tools or hardware strewn about. I even went through the trash can in the corner. I missed the meat entirely, spending hours looking for the key, but it was nowhere to be found. At that point, I knew that there was only one person who could have it, and I hoped that he would finally show face. I pulled out of my driveway and tried calling Floyd one last time, but he still wasn't answering. With my convertible roof down, I noticed something red sticking up out of the dry grass and the trees across the street that I'd somehow missed the past few weeks. I pulled over to the side of the road and turned off the engine, stepping out of the car, my phone still ringing in my hand. Sure enough, there on the side of the road, covered in dry dirt and grass, was Floyd's toolbox, sat undisturbed for over a month. I leaned back against my car to gather my thoughts, and felt the rhythmic hum of the engine subtly tickle my back. My phone finally gave up on attempting to call Floyd's, and as the hum immediately stopped from behind me, I remembered that I'd already shut my engine off. I sat frozen for a few moments, my hands shaking and sweating. I forced myself to move, to pick up Floyd's toolbox from the ground, and to locate what I needed. I pulled a small crowbar out of the mess of scattered tools and wedged it underneath the door of my trunk. I expected the crack of metal and a breaking lock, but was instead met with a crinkling sound, like the tearing of paper. The trunk opened with much less force than I'd expected. Before I even looked, the overwhelming scent hit my nostrils, the interior of my small trunk smelling strongly of figs and honey. I lurched back in disgusted shock when I finally mustered the courage to look inside. Bundled inside, scrunched and cramped in the minuscule space, was some sort of biomass. The cocoon clung to every possible surface like a damp scab, except the inside of the trunk door that I'd just torn from it. Strands of fleshy resin latticed out from the central mass, a clearly humanoid husk of withered flesh and twisted bone. Clusters of fat, translucent bubbles trembled softly, pulsing with some internal rhythm as they now sat under the blinding sun. Beneath the web sponge of sweet-smelling gloop that encompassed the body, I could clearly see patches of shredded pale leather, once a pristine white bomber jacket. As sunlight brought the abomination into view and warmed it in its heat, something inside began to stir. I stood utterly unable to react or even to breath as the nauseating crack of bone and the tearing of sinew became less and less muffled from beneath its shimmering moist surface, and as horrible bent appendages tore rapidly to escape. Finally, after what felt like eternity, a single spiny limb broke through, pushing its hairy form through the mess. Another leg followed, and then four more followed by soft, shriveled wings that filled themselves with a thin red fluid and hardened quickly in the air. When it finally pushed its full form out of the body cavity, it fell out of the trunk with a sickening wet splat on the pavement at my feet. The creature was about the size of a dog, and twitched on ground as it straightened out its glistening form. In mere moments, its soft and translucent exoskeleton bulged and solidified in the air, its dozens of compound eyes wildly twitching as it seemed to lock onto me. By the time I let myself breathe and managed to make myself move, the wasp-like thing had already righted itself on the ground, preening its crystal wings while it prepared to take flight. I turned and made a mad dash towards my house, only to hear the horrible chitter of its enormous wings as the buzz of its flight neared me. I felt 6 spiny-clawed legs grip my back and slam me into the ground, and I turned my head just in time to watch it rear its bulbous abdomen and plunge a 6-inch stinger deep into my stomach. I felt my body start to go limp, and with the last of my strength, I gripped the crowbar in my palm tight and jammed it straight into its side. A horrible wet fluid poured out of the creature's abdomen, and it screeched as it retracted its barb from me, pulling away and retreating back into the air. I dialed 911 and drifted off into paralyzed numbness, watching as it haphazardly flew away into the woods. I woke up in the hospital this morning. The doctors have had a lot of questions for me that I've been unable to answer, and the police still don't believe what I'm telling them about the decomposed body in the trunk of my car. I regret calling 911 now, though. The doctors managed to get the toxins out of my system, but as a result, I can feel what's growing inside me, eating me from the inside out. I wish I was still paralyzed and sedated, because now I can feel every last second of what's happening to me. Story 2. So a few nights ago, I was driving home from my girlfriend's house. I usually sleep there and leave pretty early in the morning at like 6 o'clock or 7 a.m. That night, though, I wasn't really in the mood to sleep. My girlfriend tried to convince me to stay over a little longer, but I wasn't really having it. Plus, I had some things I wanted to do on my laptop. Typical for me at that hour, but I'm pretty much nocturnal at this point anyway. I remember vividly that it was 3:30 in the morning when I left. Her house wasn't far from mine at all, only about 5 minutes, give or take during the day, with the traffic that the annoying tourists that flood my area this time of year cause. At this hour, of course, there was not a single soul in sight on the roads. Just me and my mom's old BMW. I made the trip probably hundreds of times over the last couple years, so the darkness, lack of people, and quietness didn't really scare me anymore. For some reason, though, I felt oddly on edge as I drove home. Not the kind of on edge that one might feel when they're late to work or school or something like that. More the kind of feeling you get when something just feels off. Something that you don't quite know or understand, but that still keeps you aware. I do have anxiety, and of course my mind just has to exaggerate every single thing that could possibly go wrong, even if it has no chance at all of happening. I could hit a pothole and pop my tires, I could get mugged, I could get pulled over, I could crash my car into a tree, I could hit someone with my car, but was it just anxiety? It felt different. Anyways, I was cruising down this familiar road I've been down 1,000 times. In my head, I was having one of those long, existential conversations that only happen in the middle of the night. My headlights are the sources of light, besides some street lamps, every now and then, or the dim traffic lights that break every other day. I drove past the lights. I was only about a minute from my house at this point, and I was looking forward to flopping into bed and playing on my laptop, maybe watching some YouTube as well. But just as I'm thinking about that, to my right, I see something weird-looking come out of the forest and out toward my car, forcing me to swerve and hit the brakes, forcing me and everything else in my car to lurch forward. I didn't hear a bump, so at least I didn't hit whatever it was. It was dark and so sudden that I didn't get a good view of it first. I thought it was an animal of some sort, maybe a deer or coyote, so honestly, I wasn't all that freaked out. Hey, It would probably be a fun story to tell my friends and family. But it wasn't a deer or a coyote at all. I tried to calm down, but when you have anxiety and your fears suddenly become realized, it's a bit hard to relax your nerves after that. But after about a minute passed, I thought I was ready to go. As I said before, I didn't hear any bumps, so I didn't hit anything, but I expected to at least see the animal keep running to the other side. I didn't see much of anything actually. Weird, but whatever. Animals are pretty skittish, and it most likely just ran away once it saw me barreling towards them. I want to put my car back into drive when I saw something right in front of my car. For like half a split second, I thought it was a coyote or even a wolf, but we don't have wolves around here. It was on all fours, staring at me with its huge and expanded eyes, and had 2 large ears, a long snout, and dark gray patchy fur all over its body. Looking a little closer, I could see its extremely sharp claws and something swaying back and forth behind it, and there were some darker parts on it, but I couldn't tell what they were. I was frozen. It was probably 10 to 11 feet in front of me. I didn't know what to do, so I just sat there with my eyes staring at it. This had to be a prank of some sort, but this was no prank. I could tell once whatever was opened its mouth to reveal its razor-sharp teeth, a gross diluted tongue that seemed to cut itself as it dragged across the teeth, and what finally revealed itself to be an off-pink tail swishing behind it. Why didn't I just drive away? I know I should have. Believe me, I wrestle with that thought every day. But I couldn't. I sat there frozen as I slowly processed what I was seeing. It couldn't have been a real animal, not one I knew of anyway. It was too unnatural. As it focused on me, I could see its pupils getting smaller. There was no way I couldn't see it. Its eyes were too big. It slowly advanced towards the other lane, more towards the light of my car. It moved weirdly like it was hurt or something. Now, illuminated in the light, it looked like some kind of giant rat, a fucking huge rat. Yes, I know how ridiculous that sounds, but please just listen to me. When I say giant, I mean giant. The thing was like 7 or 8 feet long. Something was dripping off of it, and I found out what the dark parts were. Blood. It was covered in blood. Some parts of its body looked mangled. Was it hurt? Was that its own blood? Or someone else's? Of course, I automatically assumed it was the blood of someone else and began to hyperventilate. I had to get out of there. I didn't know what the fuck this thing was, but I didn't want to stick around and find out. I made a little plan with myself to just bolt when the thing was out of the way, but as I put it into drive, the rat immediately turned my direction and stared at me. I heard these sounds come out of it, like squeaking and some grunts and hisses. For a moment, the rat got on its hind legs and did some weird, spinning motion. I guess. I don't know how else to describe it. Now, I don't know why I did this. I literally have no idea, so don't come attacking me for it. I grabbed my phone and took a picture of it. It didn't see me take a picture of it, but as I lowered my phone, I saw it fall back down on all fours and make its way over to my side. My mom's car can get kind of hot, so I had the window down a bit. I kept repeating "what the fuck" in my mind over and over again as it approached my window. I had a clear view of it now, and the stench that breathed forth at me was the worst thing I've ever smelled in my life. I've smelled some pretty damn horrid things, but this was on a whole other level. I don't know how to describe it, but it's like a combination of the stench of dead animals and just general shit. That stench alone was making me want to throw up. I was just sitting there freaking out as it did this. I also heard these wet, slapping sounds as it walked around, probably from the blood it was covered and caked in. Now, I'm going to admit something. I was scared. I was fucking scared out of my mind. I'm not the type of person to act like a coward or to be scared all the time, but this thing was so big and scary looking. But for some reason, I still wasn't panicked. Why? I don't know. I couldn't say why, but I wasn't panicking. I was just scared. Maybe my mind just shut down completely, trying to rid itself of such a horrible sight. And now I'm thinking it may have, because as it was practically nose to nose with me, I just remember opening my eyes. It was gone, and I was just sitting there alone. Where the fuck did it go? I know I didn't imagine it. The mind can conjure up some pretty crazy shit, but not that. That was way too real. I know what fucking happened. I was hyperventilating, I was shaking uncontrollably, I was sweating, I was crying, everything a person would do when they're that scared. I don't know why I didn't call the police right away. In hindsight, I should have. but I did check to see if I was bleeding or something because something felt wrong with my leg, but I didn't see anything, thank God. So, with that small victory, I was able to calm myself down a little, and by the time I had calmed down, it was about 4 a.m. I just wanted to go home and forget about what just happened. I don't know what the fuck that thing was, but I couldn't take it anymore, and I just wanted to go home and sleep for as long as I possibly could. But it wouldn't be that easy, would it? When I pulled into my driveway and looked towards my house, I immediately noticed something strange. Some of the lights were on, and the front door looked like it was gone. Strange, but when I actually got inside, I couldn't fully comprehend the carnage I was stepping into. My house was a total wreck. Everything was broken, smashed, what have you. Everything. I knew my parents were out of town, so it couldn't have been them. Was my house broken into? Great. I get attacked by a giant rat monster, and to make matters even worse, now my house gets broken into, but that's when I noticed something odd. A blood trail leading down my hallway. I heard some sounds like someone ripping apart a piece of meat and sloppily eating it, and then a muffled squeak. Was it the cat? No way. I slowly made my way towards the sound, and when I peered down the hallway, I saw a tall body, gray bloody fur, those ears ripping pieces off my cat and eating it. I'm not sure if I can ever fully explain what I felt at that moment, but when I saw it, I was instantly fucking frozen, and I was angry, and I don't know. It's hard to explain. The thing just looked up at me as it finished off the last of its meal, and then it made a funny sound. I know it sounds crazy, but I honestly can't explain it. It was like a high-pitched squeak with a grunt, but like weird. It was like it was almost impersonating something it knew it shouldn't have been able to make. But it did. It made that sound, and then I was powerless to do anything. The sound made me lose consciousness. I have no memory of what happened after that. Story 3. For as long as I can remember, I've always had trouble sleeping. I was a teenager by the time I realized it wasn't normal to lay awake for 2 or 3 hours before finally falling asleep. And even then, I only sleep for a couple hours. I tried everything to ease my condition. I tried melatonin, sleeping pills, exercise, alcohol, marijuana, white noise, warm milk, sensory deprivation, therapy, Ambien, hypnosis, magnesium supplements, valerian root, changing my diet, T-Itavan yoga, hot baths, ice baths, the list goes on and on. Most things didn't work at all, and the few that did would result in me not getting any restful sleep. I've had doctors look me over and paid way too much for a battery of tests to identify a cause. Nothing was ever found, so I almost gave up and just accepted that I would be tired forever. However, a while ago, I finally found something that helped. I started keeping a notepad on my nightstand next to my bed. I would write down whatever I was thinking about, just letting my thoughts flow onto the page. The first time I tried it, I settled into bed with a pen and paper and just started writing whatever came to my mind. I'm in bed. I want to sleep. I wish I could find out what it's like to dream. That was the first thing I wrote. Then, I was waking up the next morning feeling refreshed for the first time I could remember in my life. I actually cried a little once I realized I had slept for 8 full hours. If that seems like an overreaction, you've never suffered from severe long-term insomnia. I looked back over the notebook after I calmed down a bit, just to see what all I had written. I remember the first 3 sentences, but there was a little more after that. I hear a voice in the void. It is screaming. I can't hear you. I didn't think too much of this, just chalking it up to ramblings of a man on the edge of somnolence. But it did creep me out a little. However, I didn't think about it beyond that as I went through my day. The next night, I settled and started jotting on the notepad. Was it a fluke? Will this work again? I hope I dream this time. I woke up the next morning after that feeling even better than I had the first time. I had a dream of an endless range of beautiful mountains that I was flying through. It was the most beautiful experience of my life. I looked over the pad to see if there would be any more strange writing there, and I was not disappointed. Enjoy the dream. I was more than a little rattled by this. It was so simple that I could easily dismiss it, but it stuck in my mind like a splinter. I thought about it all that day, unable to shake the cancerous thought. I kept telling myself that I had written it on the edge of sleep, and probably felt the dream coming on. It was probably something I wrote while on the edge of consciousness, and I just wanted to tell myself to enjoy the experience. I mean, I did enjoy it immensely. I think it was the first dream I had ever had. Still, I felt a little unnerved by it all. I settled back into my bed for the 3rd night, and pulled out the notepad and pen. I took a few deep breaths and let my thoughts wander freely from my head to the page. I loved the dream last night. I've never felt this good in my entire life. The weird messages are a little creepy, but I shouldn't let it get to me. That night, I dreamed of laying in my backyard, staring up at the stars twinkling like ice shards in the black sky. My fire pit was crackling lazily next to me. I couldn't see it from my position, but I could actually feel the warmth of the flames safeguarding me against the chill of the evening. It wasn't as exciting as flying around the mountains in my previous dream, but I didn't mind that. It was peaceful. I woke up and looked at the notepad, wondering what strange note I had left myself this time. Don't let it unnerve you. Just watch the stars. You'll soon walk among them. The peace of the dream faded immediately as I read that final sentence. There was something sinister about it that I couldn't place my finger on. Walk among the stars? What the hell did that mean? I felt a strange sense of foreboding for the rest of the day. I work at a warehouse as a certified forklift operator, which means my mind has plenty of opportunities to wander as I load pallets onto trucks or stack them in designated holding areas. The whole day, as I listened to the drone of the forklift's motorized workings, I kept wondering what that final message meant and kept coming up with nothing. I was still adjusting to all the extra energy the sleep was providing me with though, so I wasn't ready to stop using the notepad method yet. I got home and actually felt energetic enough to cook myself a nice dinner of pan-seared pork chops with fried apple and onion slices, then deglazed the pan with chicken stock and added ground mustard seed, as well as butter to make a sweet and savory sauce to top it with. It was exquisite, and by the time I finished eating, all my anticipation had drained away. I got in bed and reached for my pen and notepad to begin jotting down whatever came in my mind. I've decided I'm going to stop stressing over these notes I'm leaving for myself. It's worth it to have a good night's sleep. I wonder what weird messages I'll leave for myself tonight. That's as much as I remember writing. That night, I had another dream. I was standing in front of a mirror, but the reflection was hazy, as if I was trying to look through a thick fog. The result was a dark silhouette standing in the mirror, leaning closer as I leaned closer and shifting when I shifted. I was transfixed by the reflection, curious as to what it looked like, but unable to clearly make it out. I reached a hand to my face and rubbed my chin in thought, then jolted awake as the figure suddenly waved a hand of its own volition. My heart was pounding in my ears as I sat upright in my bed. I felt a pang of dread as I leaned over to look at my notepad. The message this time obliterated any chance for dismissing the notes as meaningless. They're not from yourself. I see you. I didn't use the notepad that night. I just laid there, too scared to sleep, no matter how desperately I wanted to. Unfortunately, I had become acclimated to sleeping regularly, and the exhaustion I felt as I watched the night sky through my window turn from black to gray was worse than it had ever been. I almost called into work, but forced myself to go through the motions anyways. I started feeling dumb, realizing I was being paranoid. I had cost myself the perfection of a night's rest and purchased miserable lethargy in its stead. It was a fool's bargain, and I decided I would put my fears to the side this evening. I was still afraid of what these messages meant, but I was more afraid to go back to the hell that takes the place of the world when one is denied nocturnal respite. I got in my bed and picked up the pen and notepad, hesitating only a moment as my eyes lingered on that final message. I shook the thought from my head and pushed on. This is ridiculous. I'm myself. I'm leaving these notes. There is no other explanation. I'm done with being afraid. It was short and sweet, right to the point. I felt my eyes grow heavy as I was barely able to finish that last word, and the ocean of sleep pulled me beneath its heavenly waves. Yet, those heavenly waves washed me ashore on the beaches of hell itself. I was in some sort of dark cavern, the only light coming from guttering torches planted in the stone floor. They were scattered all about the enormous space, but seemed concentrated around some sort of throne with a dark figure sitting on it. It was hard to focus on the figure, like its body was wreathed in twisting tendrils of smoke. I could see it was covered in chains, though. I felt myself being drawn to the base of the great stone chair, like a current pulling me inexorably along, no matter how hard I kicked against it. I stood before the throne and could feel the creature staring at me. though I wasn't even sure if it had eyes. I felt my hand reach out and was surprised to see I was holding a weathered key. The figure gestured at a lock resting at the foot of the throne. I didn't want to unlock it, fearing what this hellish thing full of malevolence would wrought upon me when it was unbound, but once again, I was powerless to halt myself. I inserted the key and the lock popped open with a loud click. And then my eyes opened and I was laying in my bed. I was covered in sweat and shivering. I could see the notepad sitting there on a nightstand, glaring up at me with the same threatening aura I had felt emanating from the thing on the throne. With a shaking hand, I picked it up and read the newest message. You are my bridge now. You are my dream. The throne awaits. I had been convincing myself that all of this were just ramblings, that I was suffering from paranoia, but I decided in that moment that something horrible was happening. I threw the notepad across the room, feeling tears well up in my eyes. I felt sick, but didn't hesitate to get out of bed. I went downstairs to make coffee and fought the twin urges to put all of this out of my mind, while also trying to make sense of it. Both attempts were futile. I was also horrified to see I had slept for 12 hours. It is the longest I'd ever slept in my life. I decided then and there that I would not be using the notepad again. If I was doomed to never sleep a day again in my life, so be it. I'd rather die exhausted than let that thing have its way. I went through my day as normal, doing my laundry, cleaning my home, shopping for groceries. As the banality of the day dragged on, I felt the tension filling my body began to ease a little. After all, life would continue as it had before the notepad. It may not be pleasant, but it would be familiar. Unfortunately, that night I experienced a sensation I had never felt before. As the day degraded into night, I felt a strange heaviness around my eyes and realized that must be what it feels like to be sleepy. I fought the feeling all the way until midnight, then could fight it no longer. I laid down in my bed, spying the notepad from across the room, laying on the floor where I had thrown it. If I had the energy, I would have gotten up and thrown in the garbage, but I couldn't have left my bed if my house had been on fire. The mounting dread did nothing to stay the hand of drowsiness that pulled my eyelids down into a darkness so complete that even my thoughts were dark blanks. After a while, I began to see pinpricks of light in the darkness, which confused me. I still felt like I was awake, but there they were, a multitude of stars shining from the inky well of the void I was in. I was in a starry abyss, and by my side, though it was hard to make out, was the smoke-wreathed figure walking with me. It spoke to me, spoke through me. It was my own voice, but the thing had hijacked it to communicate with me. Kneel before me, and you shall walk among the stars. Suddenly, the stars winked out, and I was shrouded in the darkness once more. For a moment, there was no light and no sound, but that only lasted for a couple seconds. Suddenly, I was on fire. My skin was burning, and I tried to scream, but the silence persisted as I was consumed. I could feel my muscles contracting as they cooked, twisting me into a fetal position as I quivered in agony. The thing spoke again with my voice. Stand against me, and you shall burn. I woke up on the floor next to my bed. I must have been thrashing around in my sleep because my blankets and sheets were twisted around me to my absolute horror. The notepad was next to me, and in large words that were hastily scrawled across the entire page was a new message. I am near. I looked at the clock and saw I had slept for 14 hours. I called into my job and explained to my boss that I was sick, which wasn't exactly a lie. He wasn't happy, but accepted the explanation easily enough. I spent the day shopping for supplies for the evening. I was going to fight this. I would try everything to avoid kneeling before it. I bought coffee and energy drinks, enough to give a rhino a heart attack. Hell, I'd have bought cocaine if I knew where to get drugs. I got home, and even though the sun was only just setting, I could feel that same sensation of exhaustion creeping into my body. I sat on my couch and began drinking all the caffeine I could. It didn't seem to help, and anger began to seep through me. I stormed upstairs and grabbed that damn notepad, went into my backyard and burned it. As the flames devoured the notepad, I thought of the dream where I'd been on fire and shuddered. I couldn't shake the recognition of how similar the black flakes of burning paper were to my skin in the dream. Still, after the notepad was reduced to ash, I felt a little better. I went back inside and continued drinking energy drinks while watching TV. I glanced at the clock every so often, noting the slow passage of time. Each hour felt like another victory, and before long, I was watching the sun dissolve the night sky. I had made it. I felt a bittersweet happiness, longing to feel the rest I had felt when I first used the notepad, but decided a Pyrrhic victory was better than a total loss. I got dressed and headed to work, attempting to return to some routine. I felt less and less tired as I went through the motions, driving my forklift and moving product about the warehouse. As I worked, my boss yelled my name out and waved me down. I got off the forklift and made my way to him. Feeling better? Yeah, I think so. Good. We need all hands right now. Next time, if you're not going to be able to make it, make sure to call earlier. It gives me time to line up another driver on the schedule to cover your spot. Yes, sir. Sorry about that. That's all right. Just try to be better about it. The reason I waved you down, though, is someone is in the front office to see you. Seemed important. I felt a little confused, but started heading that way. Truthfully, I didn't have any idea who it could be, considering I don't socialize with anyone. That's not an exaggeration. I don't have friends, I don't go out, and I don't have any living family. My existence is solitary, a result of my insomnia, making it impossible to talk to people for any other reason than necessity. By the time I reached the office, my mind was racing. I walked in and saw the receptionist look up at me. She was talking on the phone and held up a single finger, silently mouthing the words, "One moment." I took a seat on one of the cheap chairs against the wall and politely waited for her to finish. She hung up the phone after a while and called out to me. "Sorry to keep you waiting. There's a man to see you in the conference room." I nodded my appreciation and made the short walk to the conference room. I walked in and screamed as I saw what was on the other side of the door. The conference room was gone. In its place was the dark cavern with the throne. The unchained and smoke-shrouded figure stood up as I walked in and seemed to grow taller as it did so. I turned to run, but the door had vanished behind me. I collapsed to the ground, gasping for air as the fire began to consume me once more. The thing slowly walked towards me until it loomed over me, its dark form vanishing in a wreath of flames and smoke from my smoldering skin. I heard it speak, this time in a voice that sounded like stone on stone mixed with the crackle of fire. "I have arrived." I woke up in my bedroom, my whole body aching. As my eyes adjusted, I could see the walls of my bedroom had large words covering every inch of them. "I have arrived." The message was scrawled over and over again. My heart was beating in my ears, and I screamed aloud in frustration. I checked my phone and saw I had been asleep for almost 2 days. I know this will be my last few moments of consciousness. I don't know how I know that, but I do. I know that I have a choice to make. I've become convinced that the entity doing this to me is the devil, or some kind of demon. It is something of pure evil. If it comes through into our world, it will bring about the end of everything. I don't know why this has happened to me. I'm not sure that matters anymore. I have to choose if I'm going to kneel and damn everyone to this thing's machinations, or pick the other option. I wanted to send out this last message to the world I hardly ever spoke to. No one may read it, and even those that do will likely never care. But I needed to make sure there was some record of what I've done and why I've done it. This isn't just my way of seeking some measure of solace and glorifying myself, or expressing self-pity for my plight. This is my warning to you all. There's a thing wreathed in smoke and darkness, a thing that is trying to break into our world. I know it will not stop until it does. All it needs is someone to kneel to it. I took a long time thinking this through, unsure if there was any other thing I could do in my situation. Finally, I've come to the conclusion that there is no other way. This is not a decision that I made easily, but one I agonized over for as long as I could. I want to keep fighting, but I know that I've lost. Yet, even in my defeat, I can deny this enemy its most prized asset. I'm looking at the rope hanging before me. I'm full of fear and misery, wishing there was any other thing I could do, but I feel my eyes growing heavy once again and know that I must act now. I won't have another chance once I slip away again. If you ever wake up to find messages you don't remember writing and are visited by a smoke-shrouded figure in your dreams, you must make this same choice. My life has been a difficult one, full of loneliness and exhaustion. I fear the end of it nonetheless. Despite this, I still rather choose this than choose to kneel to that monster. At least now, I can finally sleep. Story 4. Have you ever had that strange feeling of someone watching you even though you're alone? That feeling that cannot be described, but can be felt? We've all experienced it in a way or another. But have you ever wondered yourself that this stressful feeling is not just a coincidence? Maybe it's more than that. Maybe this feeling is way more than just a feeling. My story is shocking and may give you nightmares. It all started when I was 15 years old. I lived in a small house on Shadow Avenue. I was a boring kid and didn't really have anything special. Most of the time I spent was on my computer playing games with my friends Charlie and Emily. They lived far away, so I never really met them. We used to play all the time, and we had so much fun doing that. We spent long hours with each other that felt like a minute. But one day it all changed. One day, I turned on my computer and invited Charlie and Emily to a game. We played for like a good hour and it was fun, until I heard a knocking on my door. "It's getting late, honey. Give your beautiful green eyes a rest." It was my mom. I nodded and gave her a kiss on the cheek. "Good night, Mom," I said. I told my friends that I had to go to sleep. I was going to turn off my computer, but then I saw something strange. It was a little message that popped up on the screen from a user named Wraith477. "Play this quiz to win $1,000. I clicked on the message. Why I did that? Because I had nothing to lose, and I thought that maybe I could help my mother financially. The first question was, what is the capital city of France? And I clicked Paris. Correct answer was written, and I smiled. Most of the questions were in the same style. And somehow I wasn't wrong even once. Until the last question. Question number 10. What is your email account? I wondered whether to answer or not. But in the end, I decided yes. I woke up the next day with a smile on my face. I got a message from Wraith477 saying, "Congratulations, you won $1,000. I was super excited. Wraith477 asked for my address and name, and so I wrote my address and my name. I didn't know whether to tell my mother or not. On the one hand, it's important for her to know, and on the other hand, I wanted to make her happy with a surprise. Later that day, I got another message from Wraith477 that said, "The $1,000 are coming soon," with a smiling emoji. 1 a.m., I woke up. I didn't know why it happened, but it felt strange, especially since I haven't heard anything. But then I looked out of the window. At first, I couldn't see anything, except for a complete darkness. But for some reason, I felt like there was something out there in the darkness. So I had an idea. I opened my door quietly, and I started walking towards the exit of the house. I took a flashlight with me so I could see better. When I left, I started trying to figure out if there was any reason for the discomfort I felt when I woke up. I circled the house to see if there was anything there, but there was nothing but sticks and torn papers. So I went back to the door, I opened it, and went back to the room. I went back to bed and covered myself with a blanket. But I just wanted to take a final look from that window, so I looked out of the window one last time. And then I saw it clearly. He was tall and had really long arms. He wore a black suit and had a shiny white mask. The mask was creepy. It had no eyes, mouth, or nose. But I felt like he was looking at me straight in the eye. I felt a feeling I had never felt before. I felt an emptiness that grew with every second that this man looked at me. I remember the silence that screamed. I closed the window and I was silent. What was that? Why was he looking at me? And what does he want? 3 days have passed since what happened. I didn't talk about it with anyone. Even tough, I couldn't get it out of my head. But I didn't know that it was nothing compared to what would happen later that day. I played with Charlie without Emily. Charlie, and I didn't know why she hadn't spoken to us for a few days. She didn't answer any of our calls. She just disappeared. After a few hours of playing together, Charlie said he had to disconnect because his mom was mad at him. I told him I'd see him, and I heard my mother calling me. I left my room and walked towards her. But then I heard something break. I called her, but I heard nothing. I took a tennis racket that I had left from class once, and I strayed walking towards what I heard. That's when something happened that I never imagined. The whole kitchen was full of broken plates, glasses, and knives. But then I got a new message on my phone. It was from Wraith477 that said, "The gift has arrived." At that moment I froze and didn't move, until I heard a knock on the back door. I walked towards the door very carefully. When I got to the door, I looked through the peephole. That's when I saw an elderly old woman. She looked scared and worried. I didn't know who she was, so I didn't open the door. I was stressed, so I ran to the bathroom and locked the door. It was late, so there was no normal reason for this woman to just wait outside my house for a long time. I called my mother, but she didn't answer. The thought that something happened to Mom scared me. I knew I had to relax, so I washed my face. I looked in the mirror and couldn't believe my eyes. My face was covered by a white mask, the same mask that the man was wearing. I tried to take it off, but I couldn't. I kept trying, but the mask was stuck to my face. I started having difficulty breathing, and then I just passed out. I regained consciousness and lost track of time. I opened the bathroom door, and I saw my mother sitting on the couch. She looked down. I couldn't see her face that well, so I moved closer to her. I heard her sobbing. I asked her if she was okay, but she didn't answer. She pointed up at the ceiling and told me to look, and I saw shocked me and made me sick. On the ceiling, there was a girl's body hanging. Blood was dripping from her body. My mother asked me, "Do you see this?" But I couldn't answer her. I was disgusted by this sight. I didn't know who this girl was, but she felt familiar to me. "Oh God, what did you do?" I asked my mother in a frightened tone. Then she looked at me. Her eyes were completely white. She was completely pale. After 5 seconds of her staring at me, she whispered to me, "Thank you for wanting to bring me a gift, son." And shortly after, my mother took a knife from the floor, put it to her throat, and cut herself. Then I got a message on my phone. I hope she liked the gift with a smiling emoji. If you want part 2, don't forget to write in the comments. I hope I ruined your night, and if not, then in the next story, I definitely will. Story 5. Matthew 7 verse 15 sat in my attic typing this post, and I've cried all the tears I can cry. I feel sick. I feel terrified. He's downstairs right now, crawling around the house on all fours. I need advice. I need help. Dale was so funny. His smile was so infectious. His laugh that could brighten even the darkest of days. All of this complemented by his gorgeous green eyes and his thick brown hair. He loved the outdoors too. Ever since we were knee-high childhood friends, Dale was always the one out from sunrise to sunset, racing around on his bike with the rest of the kids from the neighborhood, water fights in the summer, snowball fights in the winter. As we both got older into our adolescence, he consistently had a sports meet to attend or some practice he was late for, always armed with a racket, a ball, or even a frisbee in his ultimate frisbee phase. Then we began dating right after university. His degree was in sports science, naturally, and mine was in psychology. When we ended up attending universities on opposite sides of the country, I thought mine and Dale's paths permanently split, going in different directions that the inevitability of time ensures with many friendships. Not us, though. I just turned 21, he was 22, and he sent me a message on July 24th. The date is significant, as 2 days prior was my birthday. Dale always jokes how he innocently got the dates mixed up. I have my suspicions he tactically waited to ensure his message didn't get the generic "thanks, means a lot" reply that I was pumping out to all the other friends sending me birthday wishes after Facebook had prompted them to. Dale thought he was so clever, I suppose it did work. To this day, he keeps up the reoccurring joke that my true birthday is July 24th. He'll put out his social media post, then he circles that date on calendars and annotates it with a big Ellie's birthday. Hell, one year he even organized a birthday shout out on the radio for me on the 24th. Anyway, I'm rambling. After he slid into my DMs, we began dating. We both fortunately bagged some pretty decent jobs in Edinburgh, Scotland. I work as a criminal profiler and him as a PE teacher. Edinburgh was the natural pick. We both love the old Scottish folklore, tales of kelpies and sprites, and of course the Loch Ness Monster. Scotland also has some of the best camping laws in the world. If you can walk around there, you can essentially camp there. The public have ramblers' rights, with mountains, moors and forests all within legality to explore and camp. Naturally, dating the man I do, a camping trip within our first couple of months living here was a must. We waited for the warm, or as much as Scotland can offer, May weather and began planning our route. We'd leave Edinburgh and head west before driving north. This would take us directly to Galloway Forest, the biggest in the country. Spanning over 300 miles, the forest is also a dark sky region, with the country limiting the light in this area to provide more starry nights. This, of course, creates some beautiful but dark nights. This might be one of the reasons for the countless stories of mythical creatures and silly monsters that spew out of the region. We disregarded this. Dale already had all the camping gear: a tent for us to share, a blow-up mattress, 2 sleeping bags, camp chairs. I wasn't joking when I said my man lived for the outdoors. I looked at myself in the mirror and smiled. My reflection smiling back. Life really does have its way of working itself out. I head out the door, with my reflection mirroring my behavior. "I got you a wee surprise as well, my love," he said with a grin on his face as he loaded the second chair into the back of the car. "And what would that be?" "Well, you'll have to wait and see, won't you?" I smiled and gently punched his arm jokingly. He knew I hated surprises. The drive there was long, but the walk after we parked the car up was even longer. Dale insisted on going as deep into the woods as we could, away from the pesky civilization he constantly claimed was such a nuisance. We finally settled on a small clearing amongst the towering oak trees that surrounded us for miles. Dale sat his bag down immediately, unloading the equipment we'd hauled for miles. I also took a seat, but purely to admire the scenery, the peace, the silence. The silence that was broken by a deafening scream. The scream ripped through the air like a knife through butter. The acoustics of the forest making it seem endless, echoing around, making its point of origin or its proximity to us indeterminable. The only sound I could compare it to would be nails on a chalkboard, but with the volume of a sonic boom. I stood up from my perch on the floor immediately, looking at Dale in horror. I could see the slight panic on his face too, a juxtaposition of his typical calmness in stressful situations. "Babe, what the fuck was that?" I asked him with a mix of fear and anger. He paused, his eyes still scanning around the trees surrounding us, hopelessly. I'm sure maybe a fox or something." "A fox?" "Dale, that sound did not come from a fox. It could be some sort of big cat. I read reports that they get brought over illegally and let out into the wild. In certain conditions they can. You're telling me we could be sharing the wood with a mountain lion in Scotland?" Dale met my eyes, giving me a look of uncertainty. "Dale, we're leaving. We can't. Sun sets in less than 45 minutes. The walk back to anywhere remotely civilized will take at least 2 hours. We can't do the walk in the dark. That'd be far more dangerous than anything that could have produced that sound." I looked at him with my mouth agape. I could see the uncertainty in his eyes, but he corrected this quickly, his concern easing and a wry smile beginning to break the tension. "You'll be all right, Elle. You're with me after all." I couldn't help but giggle. We soon forgot about the scream. After we set up the tent and got a small fire going, it soon began to get dark. We took this as our sign to crack open the bottle of wine we'd brought with us. Dale pulled the red from his bag along with 2 wine glasses. He filled them up and handed me mine. "I propose a toast," he said gallantly, "to my gorgeous Elle, who without whom I don't know what I would do. To this beautiful forest we've found ourselves at the heart of, and to God. Cheers, my love," I replied, clinking our glasses together. After that, we just chatted the night away, watching the fire dance in front of us, holding hands, listening to the crackle of the kindling. "Think we're going to need a wee top up on firewood." Dale said, "Okay, babe, be careful." He rose from his perch on the log and marched off into the forest, a slight sway in his step from the alcohol. I giggled like a little girl, so in love, so happy at that moment. We went beyond the tree line into the darkness, and I heard him begin to break branches. Snap, 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 crack. An unusually loud, slightly different crack came from the darkness. I heard Dale gasp, and then nothing. "Babe," I said as I got up. "Babe," I shouted with more urgency, running into the trees. I was immediately engulfed by darkness, the illumination of the camp fire soon shrouded out by the trees. I kept shouting Dale's name, in a panic, scouring the dark forest floor as best as I could, searching for his potentially incapacitated body. The tears began to roll down my face, and my heart pounded through my chest as every second that passed with no sign of him. Then I heard it. Hell, it was just a whisper. One that could have been mistaken for a gust of wind amongst the trees, but my heightened senses in this stressful environment urged me to pursue it. I looked in the direction I heard the whisper from. Up. I swore up and down it came from above me, in the dark branches of the trees that covered me from the night sky. As my eyes adjusted more to the dark, I saw it. The silhouette of a figure up in the trees. It looked to be reaching towards me, reaching out its hand, and then, Ellie. A voice called from back in the campsite. Dale, I cried. I raced back to the campsite and saw Dale stood there. I ran up and embraced him, jumping into his arms with relief. You're freezing, I told him, pulling my arms back from his ice-cold skin. Where's the firewood? How are you going to warm up now? I continued. Something dropped down from the trees. A bat, maybe. Dale replied. I thought back to the silhouette I'd seen in the tree. Much larger than a bat. I kept it to myself, though, not wanting to stress Dale more. I think we'll just go to sleep now anyway. I don't really want to go back out there. Oh, okay, my love. Let me get ready for bed. I began getting changed in the tent, watching as Dale just looked out into the woods. He was frozen, just staring into the same spot in the tree line he'd entered before. Staring into the same dark abyss. Are you coming to bed, babe? I called. Yes. All right then, I thought. He was probably just spooked. We got wrapped up in our sleeping bags in silence, before turning off the small light illuminating the tent. I nodded off fairly fast, considering the circumstances. That's when it happened. Something woke me. I'm not sure what, or at what time, but my body instantly felt in a state of panic. I knew something was watching me. I opened my eyes ever so slightly, my long eyelashes covering the small slither of pupil in between my eyelids, enough to see without giving away that I was awake. Dale was sat up, still in the dark. His legs were crossed and up very high, his knees uncomfortably close to his chest. His eyes were wide open, wider than I'd ever seen them, and he was staring right at me. My palms immediately started sweating and my heart raced once again. He was looking at me like some piece of meat, not blinking, no discernible emotion, just staring. I closed my eyes again, not moving, paralyzed in fear. I pretended to start waking up, stretching my arms. I heard his sleeping bag rustle, and when I turned over, he was sleeping again. I was stunned, lying there awake for the rest of the night until the comfort of the sunrise saved me. The next morning, Dale said he wasn't feeling well and wanted to go home. Odd. The man spends every minute of his life outdoors and all of a sudden wants to pack up and leave? I didn't argue, instead beginning to pack up the stuff with him. The walk back to the car was silent, so awkward. Occasionally, I'd turn around to catch Dale lagging behind, staring at me again. Every time he saw me look, he'd avert his gaze to somewhere else. Once we got back in the car, Dale complained he was too tired to drive, that he just wanted to rest in the back. I reluctantly agreed. He knew how much I hated long drives, but I suppose if he wasn't feeling well, I should probably cater to him. What's wrong? I asked him. I just want to get out of the sun. I hate being outdoors. He replied. This was odd. I hate being outdoors. He must really not be feeling well. The whole drive, he maintained his newfound unnerving stare. I could feel it now, burning into the back of my head. I could almost sense a feeling of danger. Every muscle in my body screamed at me for the entire car ride to pull over and run, but I didn't. And nothing happened. Yet. We got back this morning with Dale taking himself off to bed almost immediately. I sat downstairs, worrying about him. What happened to him out in the woods? Did he really just get ill? Why has he been staring so much? I decided I had to confront him. I marched up the stairs and placed my hand on the doorknob, preparing myself to open it. But I heard him scurry on the other side, as if he was hurriedly getting out of a compromising position. I opened the door to see Dale sat on the floor, his legs crossed and his knees uncomfortably close to his body once again. Is everything okay, Ellie? He asked. What's going on with you? You've been acting so strange since the camping trip. Did I say something? Babe, please just be honest with me. I'm fine, babe. I'm just tired. He smiled and chucked. I looked at him closely. His smile was so hideous, his teeth stained a muddy brown. His laugh that made me feel nauseous with fear and intimidation. All of this exacerbated by his widened pale blue eyes. Pale blue eyes. It was also at this moment I noticed he'd drawn all of the curtains closed to keep out the sun, an apparent hatred of the outdoors that my man loved so much. "When's my birthday, Dale?" I asked. His smile dropped. His stare widened. "July 24th, of course. My real birthday," I replied, noticing his eyes locked onto the calendar on the wall behind me. "That is your real birthday. It says it on the wall behind you. Ellie's birthday. You are Ellie." My heart dropped, and a pit of terror opened up in my stomach. I felt tears begin to well in my eyes, and a fear so primal I didn't know what to do. That man was not my boyfriend. Dale noticed my realization and stood to his feet in a singular, smooth, almost impossible motion. I looked at what he was holding, grasping a handful of dirt from the now-empty plant pot on the bedside table. He maintained his stare, never breaking eye contact, as he slowly raised the dirt to his mouth before hurriedly shoving it in there. He munched on it ferociously, like a ravenous beast, swallowing it without even a glimpse of discomfort. He licked the dirt surrounding his lips, savoring every morsel. "Go to the attic." He pointed up. The tears were now streaming down my face. I opened my mouth to speak, but the words almost refused to come out. I slowly turned and obliged, feeling his stare piercing the back of my head as I pulled down the stairs to the dark attic and climbed up. I'd barely reached the top when I felt them slam behind me. Darkness. I sat there for a moment, just thinking about what had transpired. Had I really just seen that? I felt a buzz in my pocket. Oh, my God, my phone. I hurriedly reached my trembling hands into my pocket, pulling it out, the screen illuminated by a Snapchat notification. I had Wi-Fi, but this bastard attic had no signal. I raced to type a Snapchat message to one of my friends, loading the app up, the waiting time taking almost an eternity. The message was from Grace, my best friend. I opened the chat. "Grace, LWTF? That's so horrible. You can be such a bitch sometimes." What? What was she even referring to? I scrolled to the message above that a voice message sent only 3 minutes ago. Sent from me. Fuck. My work phone downstairs, logged into Snapchat too. But what could it be? I tapped the message, and the sound that played was the worst sound I could imagine. Worse than that scream the other night. The sound of my own voice. I don't even want to repeat the things said on that voice message, and before I even had a chance to justify myself, Grace had blocked me. That was when I noticed more and more of these messages being sent to all my friends, to my work colleagues. It was only when I put my ear to the floor of the basement, when I heard him, or should I call him it, recording these messages with an uncanny resemblance of my voice. That brings me here. I can hear it moving furniture around the house. I can hear it scuttling around by the sounds of it on all fours. I'm at a loss. I don't know what to do. I'm terrified for my life. For Dale's life. For all of yours. I turn my head to the mountain of boxes in the attic. Posters, paintings, and anonymous stuff sprawling out of them. There was one in particular that caught my eye. One of Dale's posters, labeled with a biblical passage. One that seemed to tell me. Matthew 7, verse 15. "Beware of false prophets, who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravenous wolves." That's it for today's creepy Reddit tales. Before we go, I just want to say a quick thanks to all of you for watching, liking, and sticking around. You guys keep this channel going, and I'll be back soon with more stories that'll make your skin crawl. Drop a comment if you've got your own spooky tale to share, and I'll see you in the next one.